Hello YouTube, this is the Troll King, back with another Troll King review. Another late one. Obviously these first few I've already explained are going to be, ones that have already come out. So I guess it's not particularly useful as a review if it's something, a new release that you're just wondering if you want to go buy, but just, things that are important to me. I like to go back and talk about my opinion. We are going to talk today about Katatonia City Burials. New one came out April 24th of this year, 2020. I learned from my Elder review. Having the vinyl there I thought was cool, but it was backward the whole time, so I probably looked very stupid. So hopefully I'm going to figure out how to get a little blip coming on the screen with the album title on it. But anyways, City Burials. So Katatonia, let me give you a little story time here about how I figured out about certain things in the extreme metal or metal genre. Whenever I was in middle school, I believe 8th grade, I got into a band called In Flames. Everybody knows about In Flames. And I went to their website, and on the very bottom of their website, they had this little banner for another website called swedishmetal.net. So I clicked on that, and my life changed, essentially. I don't know if the website's still active. I honestly haven't been in forever. It's a cataloging, alphabetically, of every metal band. Traditional, power, speed, black, death, grindcore. Every metal offering from the country of Sweden by, alphabetical from every band is on there, and it changed everything. So that's how I got into the Swedish and European death metal scene before I even got into the American scene. It wasn't until I got into certain Swedish bands that I could see, I go to their website, they talk about their influences, and that's when I found out about American acts like Suffocation, like Immolation, Cannibal Corpse, people like that. So the first, before I got into Katatonia, I got into October Tide, which led me to Jonas Rensky. I looked at his little biography page, and that led me to Katatonia. Now, at this time, I was looking for death metal of the melodic or just straight up way. So death metal is what I was interested in. So their first two, Dance of December Souls and the amazing Brave Murder Day, those were the two that really lit my fire. 1998, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not super up on their biography. I think something happened to Jonas's voice because obviously Michael Ackerfeld from Opeth did the brutal vocals on Brave Murder Day. But Jonas Rensky, the vocalist, and I think at that time drummer as well, was not able to do the growls anymore. So by Discouraged Ones, they decided to take a more depressive, proggy rock with some doom metal laden in and take that for a spin. And it was probably a few years before I really got into that direction. But once I did, it hit me really hard. And so since Discouraged Ones, they've been on this tear of, this gloomy, depressive, metallic rock that is just, they've not had a dud. Really, in my opinion, their whole career, but definitely in that vein, since Discouraged Ones, they haven't had a dud. But it definitely, in 2016's The Fall of Hearts, I was like, I don't know what they're going to do. That's a tough one. That is going to be a very tough one to follow up. That album is borderline perfect. If you I guess I won't do a review of it here, but if you like City Burials and you check it out, either just on your own or from this review, that'd be pretty cool. Check out Fall of Hearts too, and you'll see what I'm talking about here. But, so let's get into it a little. The album starts off with Heart Set to Divide, which, this album, I guess if I can give a little preamble, really to me, brings thoughts of 2009's Night is the New Day. And in that, I think Katatonia is best when Jonas Rensky has this ghostly, just beautiful, haunting voice that never really gets too aggressive, but just stays kind of discordantly melodic. And it lays down on top of these just incredibly oppressive, not with their heaviness, but just with their gloom and just atmospheric feel to them, these riffs. And with Night is a New Day, it rose to kind of a new standard of the riffs got slightly heavier, and they started to incorporate a little subtle electronica into little things to give it a kind of even colder vibe. And that's the word that I'm going to be using a lot to describe this album, City Burials. It's very cold. It's very unforgiving. It's very, if I can say so, and I don't mean this negatively, it's very unwelcoming. It's actually kind of a chew to really break in and get to the juice of this album. So it starts with Heart Set to Divide, which is, it starts with this really haunting Jonas vocal line with just, obviously the depressive lyrics. And then when the riffs kick in, you start to see immediately, in my opinion, what becomes a glaring departure from what the Fall of Hearts was. The Fall of Hearts, excuse me, is very heavy, very doom laden. I mean, it's melancholic. It's Katatonia, but that album and Dead End Kings before it in 2012 have a kind of like a layer of warmth on top of them, and a very rhythmic approach, almost approaching, kind of like a heavier, more depressive Tool kind of deal. And that warmth is gone on City Burials. And just from the, depressive looking album cover and what seems like the direction, it gives you a kind of isolated feel, but not isolated like a wintry isolation, out in the wilderness. It's a very modern, metropolitan kind of city isolation. It kind of gives you the feeling of just being alone in a crowded room kind of deal. And so it kicks in with that, and you can tell right away the production's a little different. That kind of layer of warmth is gone. The oppressiveness of the guitars, there's no gleam to it, no sheen or no little layer on top. It's just cold. It's angry. And I really like it a lot. And then it goes right into Behind the Blood, which is showcasing a different part of this album, which is the music actually gets really, uncharacteristically up-tempo to the point where the verse riffs are almost kind of an 80s cock rock riff, like German metallic rock, like Scorpion or something. It's really weird. I've never seen anything like that from Katatonia. And specifically Jonas's voice, it's intense. I've never seen, he really, after doing it, 98 was Discouraged One, so 22 years, he's adventurous in a new way, like hitting some really higher notes and just doing some things melodically that you hadn't seen in a while. And another important note here, I keep drawing the parallel between this and Night is the New Day. As I understand it, I know in the record sleeve for this, it says all music was written by Jonas Wrensky, the vocalist. And I mean, obviously we know he's a multi-instrumentalist as well from various projects he's been involved in. And I believe Night is the New Day had the same thing. And so what I can tell, usually, when Jonas is in charge of the music, is that, like, again, I'm going to be using a lot of the same kind of words. The riffs are very oppressive, very dark, very desolate sounding, and his vocals are almost discordant. They sound at first almost amelodic because you can't find the melody that he's latching onto, but once you find it, it just makes so much sense. And so that's kind of the feel I got with Behind the Blood. Got a little more up-tempo, but it had that same kind of vibe. But then you get to Lacquer, which is all of Katatonia's albums, especially recently, will have about 2 softer tracks that, there's not a lot, no distortion. They can range from up-tempo to sad, but they kind of strip things down. But something like Lacquer, in my opinion, they've just never done. They break it down to this almost, it's kind of like a modern or like a futuristic city lounge type vibe, in that there's no, it's not a typical lounge vibe like you would think, but just with the electronica and the way his voice sounds and just the vibe and atmosphere of it, it's beautiful. It's cold and it's beautiful and it's heart-wrenching, and even in that, more so in my opinion than Behind the Blood, his vocals are just so soulful. I've never heard him sing like this. It's very amazing. I honestly, between that and I'll just go ahead and talk way later in the album, but Vanishers has the same kind of deal. And Lachesis. So there's about 3 of them on this track. Vanishers actually has I can't remember her name. It's a Swedish female vocalist doing guest vocals with it. It's amazing. To be honest, if he wanted to do a side project of just an album of those, I'd be so into it. It almost has like a stripped down, sadder, like Ulver Perdition City kind of vibe in that modern, cold, isolated kind of deal. So really, really love. Then you get to a song like Rain, which is number 4, and there's a couple others, City Glaciers, Untrodden, things like that I think are pretty standard fare for Katatonia. Same kind of things I've been talking about. Rain, especially, another one that gives me that Night is the New Day kind of vibe, where the riff is just, super menacing, and it almost sounds like Jonas's voice is just softly haunting the track. It's the best way I can describe it, I guess. My favorite track on the entirety of the album is Neon Epitaph. And it's, again, reminiscent of, I guess the best way, there's a track on Fall of Hearts called Serac, and this one, I think the beginning riff is very comparable to that same kind of dum-dum-dum kind of vibe to it. And if you compare those two very specifically, you'll see a lot of what I'm talking about in the production difference between that, melancholic warmth to this isolated, cold quality to the music. But it's just it's difficult to say like Jonas sounds so angry because it's a very Jonas Rensky version of anger in that it's very cold. It's not so much unfeeling as it's felt so much in terms of sadness that it sounds numb, I guess might be a good way to describe it. And there's always just been a great juxtaposition between that numb, emotional voice to the dark, oppressive music. So rating this one was a little tough. Like I said, the thing about Fall of Hearts, Dead End Kings with that warmth that I'm talking about is it makes it very inviting. It's not, they're not, the world's most popular band, so I guess it's maybe not everybody loves it, but it's you can get into it in the first listen, rhythmically and all that kind of stuff. This was a lot tougher of a chew. This was something that I really had to, I listened to it digitally as much as I could, and then I got the vinyl and spun it a good 4 or 5 times to really feel like, okay, I'm starting to understand what they're going for. And so in that case, I really, really like it. And unfortunately, it did have the unfortunate position of having to follow a near perfect album in the Fall of Hearts. Near or right on the money of perfect. That album is so good. So to me, if I had to give it a rating out of 5, I'd say I'd give it a 4 out of 5. And I really don't know what else to say about that. Maybe it's not a huge departure, I guess, stylistically from what you see in Fall of Hearts and everything they do. But they're on a bit of a road. And I really feel like with something like this, I feel like this album is really great. But if they continue on this road, like their next album is going to be a better version of this. Like I feel like this took a lot of really cool chances and did some cool stuff, but it didn't 100% work for me all of the time. And I think the next one is going to be like a crystallization of it. Sort of like Dead End Kings was what it was, and then Fall of Hearts was a crystallization of that. Maybe I guess you could say this was a crystallization of Night is the New Day, but I just feel like they just need to flesh it just a little more. And I would give it a 5 out of 5. I'm not afraid to give perfect scores. But so, yeah, that's how I feel about City Burials by the almighty Katatonia. Hope you guys dig these reviews. If you do, just, like, comment, share, whatever, subscribe, or don't. These videos are just kind of fun for me, and I like doing them, and hopefully you guys dig them too. But, all right, catch you later.